that any better? Test one. Can't hear a thing. Good morning. Still can't hear it? Kevin? Test. Sheriff? Hello? We have nothing on the PA. Test one, two. It's up. Test. They said they came here over there. Good morning. We're gonna. Is it okay? Good morning. We're gonna call the meeting of the Criminal Justice Committee to order for April 10th, 2019. We'll start with a roll call.
Mr. Hess,
Present.
Mr. Byrne, Mr. Lear, Mr. Legess, Mr. Olthoff, Mr. Snipes, Miss Dunbar, Mr. Ritter, Miss Parker, Mr. Fairfield, Mr. Carrico, Mr. Eckhoff, Mr. Smith, Miss Zuccolo, Mr. Wheeler, Mr. Searoy. We have a quorum.
Okay, I have not received anything for public comment. Is there any public comment at this time? Any public comment? Everybody received a copy of the minutes from March 13th, 2019. Take a motion to approve. Mr. Burns, second by Mr. Fairfield. Any questions? All in favor say aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Judge Cunnington for the Traffic Criminal Assessment Act.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the County Board. I'm here basically in place of Sandy Cianci, who's at a state meeting talking about this very issue. So I'm going to give you just a brief overview of what we're dealing with here and how it came about, and then I'll answer any questions you might have, or I'll try. I don't have all the information. The book is about 200 or 300 pages long, and it is work in progress because the state legislature passed this law, and then the Office of Administrative Courts is responsible for coming up with the procedures to implement the law. So I am actually right now, I know most of you here, but I am sitting now in the aggravated traffic call, which is the DUIs, the driving revokes and suspendeds, the death cases, DUI death cases, and I'm taking, or have taken Judge Tungate's spot there in courtroom 200 when she retired. So the Access to Justice Act was passed in 2013, and they had a goal of improving access to legal information, resources, and assistance for all litigants, regardless of income or circumstances. So this task force in 2013 was looking at all of the fines and costs throughout the state. And what they came up with in 2016, they adopted 5 core principles. And I think it's important just to understand why the state legislature did what they did, to understand what these 5 core principles were. First of all, they said that courts should be substantially funded from general government revenue sources. Court users may be required to pay reasonable assessments to offset a portion of the costs of the court borne by the public at large. So, typically, our government's no different than any other county government. We've had a lot of add-on costs to try to help supplement and fund the court system. They're saying basically the opposite, that county government has to fund it, not on the backs of the litigants and the defendants. The amount of assessment should not impede access to the courts, and should be waived to the extent possible for indigent litigants and the working poor. That's a big part of this statute. Assessment should be simple, easy to understand, and uniform to the extent possible. Number 4, assessment should be directly related to the operation of the court system. And number 5, the General Assembly should periodically review all assessments to determine if they should be adjusted or repealed. So that's one interesting aspect, is they set these assessments and there's no provision for any increases, so it has to go back to the legislature. One other point that just popped into mind, it sunsets after about 18 months, so June 1st of 2021, this complete law sunsets unless they, of course, extend it. So what they've done, I'm going to try to explain it in a nutshell, is they've addressed both the civil aspect of the court system and the criminal aspect. On the civil aspect, they've set up 4 schedules. And when you file a case, whether it's a small claims or an at-law case or whatever civil case you file, there is a pigeonhole, I'll call it, one of those 4 schedules that your case will fall into, and that will be the filing fee. It's all set. It has changed a little bit. The civil aspect, they're a little bit less than what they have been, maybe 10% or so. I don't see a lot of changes in the civil aspect. The criminal aspect has changed substantially, and there are now 13, or will be July 1st. This all takes effect July 1st, so that's why we're kind of scrambling to get this in place. But the criminal aspect has 13 different schedules. So your crime is going to fit into one of those 13 pigeonholes. Now it's pretty haphazard. The judge will issue a fine, and then we have our court costs. And we have a laundry list of court costs that have been set by statute, have been added on over time, and a lot of those are going away and they're changing. So I thought the best way to explain this is to give you an example of one of the 13. It's the one that I deal with probably the most. It would be the misdemeanor driving under the influence charge, DUI, or what we call operating under the influence if it involves a snowmobile or a boat. They all fall in the same category. Right now, a typical plea dollar amount for a DUI, if a person came in and it was their first DUI, that's why it's a misdemeanor, and they're eligible for court supervision on their first DUI, a typical fine would be $500. That is actually the minimum by the statute. It is a Class A misdemeanor, so it does have a potential sentence up to 364 days in jail and up to a $2,500 fine, or both jail and a fine. So typically on a minimum first offense, there'll be a $500 fine. And then added to that by statute is a $750 what we call DUI equipment fee. That goes to the state. Then there's additional costs of $983. And that's broken up into about 20 different categories. Well, I'm just going to read these because this is what we're dealing with. I don't even know what all these are, to tell you the truth, but there's a circuit clerk fee. I'm not going to give you the amounts, but just to give you an idea, because I'm going to compare this to what the new statute's going to say. So there's a circuit clerk fee, court automation fee, document storage fee, police operation fund, a court fee, state's attorney fee, state's attorney auto fee, probation and court system fee, security fee, trauma fund. One that's dear and near to my heart is the teen court fee, which I'll mention in a minute. In fact, that was the last time I was at one of these committees, was about 15 years ago when we put that teen court fee into effect. Then there's a gang violence fee, Crime Stoppers Fund, Victims Fund, surcharge. In this case, the surcharge is $352. a leads fee, law enforcement camera fund, spinal cord fee, prison review vehicle fee, clerk operations and administration fee, muni municipal fund fee, child advocacy fee, fire prevention fund, fire truck revenue fund, clerk operations administration, and Illinois State Police Merit Board. All those numbers total $983. So at the end of the day, that defendant is getting assessed fines and costs in the amount of $2,233. Under the new statute, July 1st, the misdemeanor DUI offense, the judge still has the discretion to issue whatever fine that they want to issue, so it can be anything up to $2,500. But assuming that it's for that particular defendant, it's still $500 just to compare apples to apples. The new total assessment then for that offense would be $1,381. And it's all set up to be divided. 322 goes to the county treasurer, and then that goes into A through J different funds here. Court automation fund, court document storage fund, circuit court clerk operations and administrative fund, circuit clerk electronic citation fund, and then the county's general fund, that's $225 of that 322. $10 into the child advocacy center fund. That's the one agency that did survive this new law. The others that I mentioned, the teen court and the Crime Stoppers, some of the other funds are gone. Let's see, then we have the State's Attorney Records Automation Fund, $2, the Public Defender's Records Automation Fund, a County Jail Medical Costs Fund, and Probation and Court Services Fund. So that 322 goes to the treasurer and it's divided into those categories. And then the state's portion is $707, and that goes to the state and into various state police funds. There's even a new one that they've added. I think it's the Merit Board Public Safety Fund. And there's about the same number of categories there. So that's going to change. It will make it somewhat simpler, because right now, if the fine changes, the cost changes well, because the costs, there's one of these items in the cost that are calculated based on the amount of the fine. So the higher the fine, the higher the cost is basically what that means. Now what we're going to see though is that the indigent defendants have an opportunity to file a waiver of these assessments, and they have to file it within 30 days of being sentenced. So what we're anticipating is that almost every defendant in our system is going to, at the end of their sentence, they're going to take a piece of paper, and the clerk has to actually post notices around the courthouse that they have the right to do this, and they're going to ask for a waiver of that assessment. Now, that doesn't waive the fine, but the judge can waive the assessment, and that's going to be based on income. If you're at 125% of the poverty level, and I have that chart because we have to figure that out, 125% with, if you have husband and wife and 2 kids, that's $32,000. If your income is at that level or less, you're probably going to get 100% waiver of your assessment. And then there's other partial waivers of assessments. If you're at 150% or if you're at 200%, you're going to get a partial waiver of that assessment. All that's going to require a further hearing by the court after sentencing to determine whether or not there's going to be a waiver of assessment, and we're going to need to collect financial information with regard to that particular defendant to determine, if they're eligible for the assessment or not. Now, in addition to these numbers, there's another set of assessments called conditional assessments, and those have to do with the specific charges. For example, drug cases, sex cases, DUI cases, they have additional assessments that are on top of the regular assessments, and those are not subject to the waiver. So the clerk has to post in 30-point typeface, printed in English and in Spanish. If you are unable to pay the required assessments, you may ask the court to waive payment of them. Ask the clerk for a copy of the forms. A couple other just side notes here. The waiver does not apply to the Illinois Vehicle Code violations. So it's going to apply to all the felonies that don't involve motor vehicles. So if it does involve motor vehicles, the DUIs, the driving suspendeds, those are not going to be subject to this waiver, but there are additional requests that can be made to the court to reduce the fines, and we anticipate that some of that will be going on. There's also provisions to convert some of the fines to public service work. It'd be $4 off for every hour of public service work that you do, and they can request that as well. They can also, if they're in a substance abuse treatment program as part of their treatment, and that costs them $1,000, they can ask the court to apply that $1,000 to their fines and costs and their assessments. I'm sorry, just to the assessment, just to the scheduled assessments, not to the fines, not to the conditional assessments. I think overall it's going to make it easier once Sandy gets this all set up. It's a nightmare to get set up right now, but it will be easier once it all gets done because there's a lot less categories, a lot less divisions. But it is a nightmare, as I said, to get this set up and get the programming and the computers changed to acknowledge these changes. I know I talked to Andy before the meeting. What's you're all interested in, and I don't have an answer, but is how this is going to affect the financial coffers of the county. I don't know. I think generally the numbers are less because that's what the state legislature was trying to do, was lessen the burden on the defendants and shift more of the burden to other resources. So I think it's going to be less. I think it'll be more than 10%. Will it be more than 30 or 40%? I don't think so. I think it'd probably be in that realm of 30 to 40% that we'll see it in a reduction. But we don't know till this starts getting sorted out. I will say that there is another bill pending right now in the legislature that will also affect us if it gets passed, and that is has to do with the traffic offenses specifically, where they would also be allowed to apply for a waiver. It's House Bill 198, and it also involves converting the total amount due, not just the assessments, but the total fines and costs on the traffic cases, converting that to public service work at the rate of $10 for every hour. For every hour of public service work you do, you get a $10 credit towards your fines and costs. Again, a partial waiver is possible, and on that statute you can go back 2 years of your fines and costs. What the problem was, or the problem is right now, is people get in these downward spirals with these traffic cases, and they get 2 or 3, and they're young, they don't have a lot of income, they can't pay the fines, they get suspended. Now they're in a more serious charge, driving suspended, the misdemeanor categories, and they just get in this downward spiral and they can't dig themselves out. It's impossible to dig themselves out because it gets into the thousands of dollars. So that particular statute's designed to help those people basically get their driver's license back. We do give them, in court, we'll give them several opportunities to pay off their previous fines and go back and get their driver's license. That's all we want. You know, this is not an offense normally where people get hurt. It's just an offense where you're not following the law and keeping your driver's license up to date, having your insurance in effect. So they, our goal is, and I think all of our goals should be to get people back on the street, but be licensed and be legal and have insurance. That's what we're trying to accomplish. So we do give them some chances to do this. I think this law goes quite a bit further and gives them more opportunity to lessen the burden of some of those fines and costs to be able to get their licenses back. So I'd be happy to answer questions.
Mr. Althoff's got a question
yes,
first.
Mr. Altor.
So I understood you saying that this is a net loss to the county. Is it also a net loss to the state?
I haven't done that analysis, but as I look at the numbers now, it looks like they're pushing more money to the state under the new law. That's what I'm thinking.
707 to 750. That tells you something, right? Never mind.
Yeah.
That was good.
But
Isn't there? I have a quick question.
Is there a possibility to have a work program where they put in time doing whatever? I know that starts a whole nother process, but so they can work off what their fine is.
Yes, yeah, community service. We do have a community service program now, and there are a number of defendants on community service, and that's monitored. If it's a serious case, it's monitored by probation. If it's a minor traffic case, or like just a simple DUI, if they have a BAC over .16, they have to, by statute, do 100 hours of public service work. So that is monitored by the courts. But yes, that's a possibility. Again, it takes. Right now, what we have is we have a list of nonprofit agencies in the community. So we'll accept public service work from any nonprofit or any government agency. If you go, wash police cars for the police department and you do 100 hours, we'll give you credit for that. Yes.
Well, hang on. While I'm thinking of my question, I have two-part question. One, how are we going to fund teen court? And then is the state going to pick up the rest of the part that they're going to cut off of probation?
Well, we've discussed the issue of teen court at our board meeting. I'm still on the board. I was involved in getting that started, but we don't have an answer for that. We hope that there will be enough money coming in to fund it from the county, but that's maybe wishful thinking at this point, since we don't know exactly what's going to be coming in and what's not. But because there's probably going to be a reduction, we may have to look for other sources, but or grants. But no, we don't have an answer for that. And we think that we probably have enough money to run through the end of the county's fiscal year. And because the law only takes effect July 1st and going forward. So we'll still be collecting teen court fees from all the fines for the past 15 years or so. And that money will still be coming in over time. And the State's Attorney's Office is very aggressively going after that money. I don't know if you have a current number, but I think it's over 220,000 right now that they've collected since the start of that program.
What about the probation? I mean, you said that was being cut out.
No, I think there's still a probation fee that's part of the new assessment.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Lear.
You indicated that there's likely to be a reduction in the money that the county receives. What do you think will be the impact in terms of community service? Will it be more community service ending up or less?
I think it'll be substantially more. We're getting requests now, we have for years. People come in and say, well, I don't have any money, can I do public service work instead? And say, no, sorry, if you can't pay it, you can't pay it. We understand that, and just do the best you can. So there will be that option available, so the judges will be able to say, okay, go do 100 hours of public service work, and that'll cover your $400 fine.
Mr. Wheeler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't know if the committee is aware, but the bond for the computer system comes out of those funds. It's substantial. I mean, I believe it's 350,000 a year. I believe is that it's a lot. Whatever that bond is, it's a lot. It's not 5 digits. That's concerning, obviously, for everybody, because we still got another, I don't know, roughly 10 years left on that bond, and the fund that was supposed to pay for it is going to be minimal now with those fees not going there, as well as the circuit clerk paying for some of her employees out of those funds as well. So it's gonna have an impact, and it's gonna get shifted over to the general fund.
Well, and some of those funds are still going to be assessed. It's just whether or not they're going to get paid or get waived or.
Exactly. And if you look at the median income in the county and all those different things, which may be the guideline that we end up using to estimate this, that's why 30-40% might be a really good number. Court security, Sheriff, where does that come out of? And that comes from the fees that are assessed, that are not part of the fines.
Correct. Yeah.
Which aren't enough now. I mean,
Right.
there's not enough that come out of there now that covers
We
our
have to
entire
do
court
something
security.
like that, So yeah, that pays for those folks that are the greeters at the door there.
Mr. Altoff?
Do the judges have any discretion in this, or is it cut and dried?
The assessment waiver is cut and dried, but we do look at the number. So if they meet the indigent number, then their assessment's waived. But if it's the 150%, 200%, if you get up into those numbers, well, now we get to look at a little more. There'll be a full hearing to determine what their income is, what the sources are. Is this net income, gross income? So there'll be a little bit of discretion there. There's more discretion on the fines. We still have the discretion to levy fines. The example I gave of the $500 fine on the DUI, we could assess it at 1,000. But that is discretionary, and that's also based on the defendant's financial ability to pay the fine. So if they're homeless, unemployed, you can't hit them with a $2,000 fine or a $1,000 fine. You're not going to get it paid, number one, and it's not fair to the defendant to put that burden on them.
And if they feel that the 200% of the poor category, if they feel that that's still excessive, they can appeal it, and it extends the court time. Do they get to appeal?
Well, anything in the circuit court's appealable, but practically speaking, I don't think that may go along with the rest of the case that they're appealing, and it typically is. Right now, it's really a nightmare, and that's why the state Supreme Court is behind this. Right now, if I sentence someone and we do a cost order, and it goes to the appellate court. Yes, the defendant is arguing that they weren't guilty or wasn't proven beyond a reasonable doubt, but they're also attacking, and their appellate defender that's appointed for them, they're attacking the cost order that was assessed, and that it wasn't proper, or they weren't given their $5 a day credit for every day they're in custody prior to being sentenced. And those errors are numerous throughout the state and the system. This hopes to eliminate all of that.
Mr. Wheeler?
It just occurred to me, do you expect a whole nother court call based on these requests? Or do you think, is it going to jam up, the mornings? What do you guys are expecting?
Well, there's four of us that do criminal work, and Judge Erickson, Judge Elliott, and then myself and Judge Dickinson. And I expect these to come in on a regular basis, and if they show with their application that they are indigent, they're probably going to get an automatic waiver without a hearing. But if they show, well, I'm making $45,000 and I got 2 kids, there might be a little bit more. So the judge has discretion whether or not to grant it based on the application or to conduct a full hearing. That doesn't really answer your question, but yes, there will be. It won't be a separate call, and but it'll be worked into the current call.
Ms. Parker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Will this apply to repeat offenders?
Yes.
Even they'll waive the fee for repeat offenders?
Yes. Oh, one other point: if you get charged with a 5-count indictment and you're found guilty on all 5 counts, only one assessment.
All right.
And it goes for the highest, whatever the highest charge is. So you don't get assessed on every count. You can get fined on all the counts, but you can't get assessments.
So basically, there's no consequences for repeat offenders?
Not in terms of a waiver, that's correct.
Mr. Snipes.
There's so many variables. I think you answered one because I was looking at when we parallel the fees with that the court currently charges versus the fees is about to be that we have to be guided by. Will there be a substantial difference, because it looks like you're still at a 25, just the way it's allocated to where it's going. That kind of concerns us at this point. Given the fact that, like the city of Kankakee in the school district, it's 100% poverty because they get the free lunches and things here or whatever. It looks like if you look at certain areas, it's almost certain that these individuals are going to get a waiver, not absolute, because you do have working individuals that are there, but because of the great number of, when you have a larger family, the cost is, I can make 30 and I'm one person, I can be assessed a fee, but if the person, if we make 30 collectively and got 2 kids, that's 100% waiver. So it's a tedious task, but it's I guess it's one that the court's going to look at, and the issue is, are the majority of the DUIs or things are coming from poverty areas?
Yeah, I agree with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Any other questions for the judge? Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank
Don't
you.
wait 15 years to come back.
Okay. Well, I gotta get invited first.
Hey, any day.
Open invitation. Yeah.
Okay, have a copy of the monthly report from the circuit clerk in your packet. She's not here. Take a motion to approve. Ms. Parker, second by Mr. Snipes. All in favor say aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. State's Attorney's Office. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
In your packet, you have a copy of the state's attorney's report. Take a motion to approve. Mr. Eckhoff, second by Mr. Snipes. Comments on the report?
Yes. Good morning. My name is Joe Cosman. I'm the first assistant. Mr. Rowe is on trial this week. That's why I'm here in his stead. After the March grand jury in 2019, we have indicted 263 cases. In 2018, at this time, there were 192 cases indicted, and in 2016, 148 cases. So from last year, we're up 36%. From 2016, we're up 77%. As you can see, the majority of the cases that we are indicting are where people are the victims of crimes, personal injuries. Next comes drugs and property damage crimes. Any questions?
Mr. Wheeler.
Just making sure it's Mr. Rowe's in trial and not on trial.
He's in trial.
Thank you.
He's in trial.
Okay.
That's what he tells me.
Thank you.
Any other questions? We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you, Joe. State Attorney, Public Defender. Nobody. And You have a copy of the Public Defender's report and take a motion to approve. Mr. Fairfield, second by Mr. Olthoff. All in favor say aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Good morning, Tom.
Good morning.
Okay, in your package you have a copy of the probation report. Take a motion to approve that. Mr. Lear, second by Mr. Eckhoff. Comments on your report, Tom?
Not much. It's pretty normal. You can see we had a little over 2,400 contacts, 268 drug tests last month, and screened 20 minors for detention and detained 14. The only thing I'll point out is I looked at last year's report at this time after the first quarter at the end of March, and everything mirrors as far as contacts, caseload, everything's about the same. But there was two areas that were very different. And last year at this time we had detained 49 minors for a total of 1,129 days, 929 days at River Valley. Compared, you can see on this report, we've only detained 29 minors for a total of 758 detention days and only 463 at River Valley, so half of what we did last year at this time. So I just thought that jumped out. And last year during the same time period, we collected 395 drug tests. So far this year, we've collected 742. So we've almost doubled, or basically almost doubled that, our amount of drug testing. I think a lot of that goes to, we have weekend drug testing now, and we also have our drug courts getting bigger and bigger as far as more people in it. So I think that's obviously added to it. But I just thought those were two areas I just wanted to point out.
Questions? Mr. Wheeler.
Thank you. Do you know what the average is? You know, we had that, like, we kind of guaranteed them 12, I think it was the number for River Valley. Do you know what that equals out to? About
The average so far this year?
Yeah, is it like
about
8?
6 to 7.
No,
In
as far per
custody?
day. Yeah, you know, like there was like
Daily
an
rate? Daily?
daily. Yeah, we talked about, 12 was the cap over that we had to pay.
Mm-hmm.
So it seems like we're a lot lower.
Yeah,
Maybe
we're
around
6
7.
to 7 in custody on any. It's about average so far this year.
Okay.
So a lot less.
Any other questions?
That's all I have with the fines and the changes coming July 1st. We're obviously watching that, looking at that. There's a lot to it. I think the impact on us is going to be minimal. As far as they took away a couple $10 fees that were assessed that went to us, but they added a $20 fee. The issue that remains for us is the Bail Reform Act. Our collection rate is going way down. So I think we're about half of what we were collecting last year at this time. I think we collected about $3,700 last month in probation fees, and that should be up around over 8. So we'll watch it. That could be just a dip this month, but that seems pretty normal lately. So that's the bigger impact on us than this. We'll see what these changes make July, or how they impact us July 1st. But that's all I have.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Sheriff. Package have a copy of the sheriff's monthly report, and I hope everybody received it by email prior to this. Take a motion to approve. Mr. Fairfield, second by Mr. Smith. Comments on the report, Sheriff.
Good morning. The report pretty much speaks for itself. Obviously, we've said before, although we haven't said it in a while, if there's anything on this report you want to see differently, certainly reach out and let us know. We'd be more than happy to add whatever we can. Probably the thing that sticks out the most, and I think the state's attorney mentioned it, about the numbers and how much they're up, that affects our local population as well. So those numbers have stayed high, and so obviously those are, and I've said before, those are what we're responsible for first and foremost. Yesterday, the full board approved the rate increase that took effect on March 1st for housing. One of the things, and I was out of town yesterday, so I haven't had time to sit down and watch. But a A couple other things that it affects is our hourly rate for our transports also went up $2 an hour from 38 to 40. So there'll be a slight increase in that. And of course the mileage stays the same, but the mileage fluctuates based on the federal rate. So that is consistent across the board as far as if the feds say it's 55 cents a mile, then that's what we get. If the feds say it's 60 cents a mile, that's what we get. If it's 50 cents a mile, that's what we get. So that's all based on that. That is not based on anything locally. Questions on that? A couple other things with the jail going on right now. We have another inspection through a company called Nakamoto, who inspects those facilities housing ICE detainees. These started back in late 2016. I think this is our third one. And the fortunate part for us, and a credit to our staff, is they get better every time. And that not only benefits ICE, but that benefits our locals, and it benefits the marshals as well. Also, in addition to that, because of our numbers, and not necessarily our numbers, but the numbers nationwide, ICE is going to install, we have one unit right now installed in our jail. It's called VTC, which is video monitoring to court in Chicago, so that it limits a little bit of the transports that we need to transport to Chicago. Because of our numbers and because of how much court time these individuals require, they are going to install a second unit. The first unit, in addition to the second unit now, doesn't cost us anything. That is strictly done by the federal government. So there is no cost to us to do that. It just adds a second monitor, a second connection to the courts in Chicago. So, but that is no cost to us. So those are good things. Questions on that? Our transports have stayed steady and consistent. I mentioned at the Finance Committee that Metro is donating 2 buses to us. They just purchased recently a number of new buses, and their board has already approved the donation of 2 buses. These buses have miles on them. They're used. We are currently spending some money on getting them fabricated for security, and we will monitor the actual cost of what it costs us to operate those from the standpoint of maintenance and everything else. They've been maintained. If there's one thing that Metro does, is they maintain those buses very well. So I have no reason to think that there's going to be any significant maintenance cost on these buses. So that is another positive for us. Questions on that?
They are going to do the maintenance.
And Metro will do the maintenance. They will charge us, but they will do the maintenance. They're familiar with those buses, and they have agreed to do the maintenance at a cost, obviously, but the cost will be probably less than what we would take, where we would take it anywhere locally. So
once again, it's a savings for the county.
Yes. A couple things under the sworn division. You might notice that last year in 2018, we ended the year countywide at 9 fatalities on the road, car accidents. Unfortunately, through March, we are at 5 already this year. And even more unfortunately, we had another one last night. That brings us to 6. So those numbers, as much as we have increased our traffic patrol, you know, we can't be everywhere, and it's just, you know, people need to slow down. People just need to slow down and be careful. And I don't know how you ingrain that into somebody's head. April is Distracted Driving Month. We will be doing, and we are doing, details on distracted driving. As most of you know, part of the problem with catching a distracted driver, and I'm sure everybody in this room has probably experienced it at one time or another, when you're talking on your phone and you see a marked squad car, you bring your phone down so nobody sees you talking on the phone. It's human nature. So it's difficult to do it in marked cars, so we are sending out some of our unmarked cars to try to do that, to try to keep people safe. I mean, that's what it's all about. I mean, we're we're not out there trying to write distracted driving tickets just to, you know, bring in revenue. We're out there, you know, looking for distracted drivers to keep them safe and keep other people safe, because that's normally who gets punished. The one driving hits somebody else, and they weren't doing anything wrong. So, also, I'm sure that you, the statewide Slow Down, Move Over campaign that's going on right now because of the 3 state troopers that have been killed in the last month. Interestingly enough, the Illinois Sheriff's Association is encouraging us to participate in what exactly what it says, slow down, move over, and we have, and we will continue, and we won't continue it just for this month. This is something that we will continue to do. I don't want to use the term routinely because we don't want to go to a routine, but we will continue to do this periodically. We actually went out shortly after the third one when the state really emphasized it. It's been on the news. It's the lead story in the news every day. Everybody knows about it, and we were out there 20 minutes and got 3 people. So they don't, you know, lights for emergency personnel, fire, police, tow trucks, all of them. They are all, when you see them on the interstate, slow down, get in the left lane, get away from them, keep our policemen safe. They are out there doing all of us a service. One lady who got a citation said, and I quote, "I'll just get an attorney and get out of this." So, anyway. Our civil process, our paper service is up significantly. We are in the process of, as we get an individual out of the academy in April, end of this month, we are in the process of looking at assigning someone specifically for civil process papers so that our guys on the road can do what they do, respond to calls. Because when they're serving papers, they're not responding to calls, and it's important that our guys are out there responding to calls. So we're in the process of, you know, when our staffing gets up a little bit, which the board was kind enough to allow us to do, we will assign someone to strictly do civil process, evictions, foreclosures, things like that. So, questions on that?
Mr. Snipes.
I know you said that you know, they stop on distracted drivers. The question now becomes, do they have to have a cell phone in their hand, because now their phones are Bluetooth, so they can be talking.
Yes.
But
it's actually hands-free.
Right.
It's got to be hands-free.
Right. So
you can be talking on the phone as long as it's not here or here.
Or here, right.
Yeah.
So my thing is that you're just talking. I'm just wondering.
Yeah.
I mean, couldn't it be?
Yeah. Well, but and that's a great point, because I've often said distracted driving isn't just cell phones. How many times do we pass by somebody and they're putting on makeup, they're shaving, they're eating a hamburger? I mean, there's a lot of ways to be distracted while you're driving. But it's specific in the statute about hands-free. So, so there's a lot of ways to be distracted, unfortunately. Your wife's yelling at you in one ear. I mean, that would be a distraction.
That's your problem.
I know. Believe me, I know. Trust me. I have mentioned this briefly to the chairman regarding our vehicles. We have done a great job with our vehicle fleet, and we are getting to the point where our last batch of the last group we purchased back in 2013, hopefully we will be able to replace them in 2020. We will bring prices for 2020s don't come out till May or June, so I plan on bringing that to this committee to forward, possibly the finance committee, to the full board, to continue to upgrade our fleet, which our fleet people are doing a great job with. So just a heads up on that.
Question.
Yes.
How many of those vehicles are close or over the 100,000?
I believe all of our 13s are over.
They're all
so
over.
The
So
maintenance,
maintenance is gonna go up.
is done at 100,000.
Right.
So that's, I mean, they're 6 years old. So
Mr. Olthoff.
I don't know if you were going to address this, but how does the use of the Dwight prison affect our operation here?
At this point, you know, it was kind of shocking, I guess, maybe not shocking, but so shortly after Dwight approved everything back in, I don't know if it must have been March, 2 days later, an RFP came out from headquarters in Washington, D.C. for a facility. Some of the things in that RFP weren't the same thing as what Dwight was proposing to the residents. So obviously they still have to be selected. They have been doing this. They have been looking for a facility in the Midwestern part of the United States for over 20 years. We, in fact, the Sheriff's Office has submitted 3 responses to RFPs over the course of time since 2009. Is something going to happen now? It's hard to say. If it does, it won't be for 5 years, tops. I mean, it'll be a long time, the process. The one advantage we have is, since the majority of our detainees do have criminal records, a lot of these private facilities don't like to take those individuals. So I would imagine that we would still be okay down the road, but it's something that we're certainly staying on top of. I talk to the Chicago office probably 2 or 3 times a week, and that's what I've told you is kind of what they've said to me.
Mr. Wheeler.
In addition, there's a bill, there's a House bill and a Senate bill, I believe, that would eliminate the local sheriff, municipalities, counties to enter into an agreement with a for-profit.
For private facilities. So
yes. We could have our arrangements with the federal government, but no separate for-profit company can do an arrangement with them in Illinois. So that probably would pass.
Yeah, it sounds like it's got bipartisan support, actually.
Yeah. So.
Oh yeah, that's a private facility, and don't confuse the Dwight prison that closed with what they're proposing. Dwight prison there is no way that they could get that building back in any shape to house ICE because of ICE's strict standards. So they are proposing a brand new facility that they would be able to house. According to the company, they're housing non-criminals, but according to the RFP, they're looking for places to house both.
So we have the facility.
We do.
Any other questions or comments?
I've got a couple more things that are brief.
Hang on 1 second. We have a motion and a second on the report. Let's take a vote. All in favor, say aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Now go ahead, sir.
Normally, when you indicate that you received a letter from PETA, the People for Ethical Treatment of Animals, a lot of times that's not a good thing. However, some of you probably saw a couple weeks ago when our deputies went into a house and rescued I think it was a boa constrictor or python or something. I don't know what it was. It was a snake, and I didn't want any part of it.
They're nuts.
So, and it's a short note. It says, on behalf of the People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals and our more than 6.5 million members, they'd like to thank our deputies for coming to the aid of a boa constrictor trapped inside a smoke-filled residence on March 28th. Thanks to the compassionate actions of your team, this animal was rescued from a dangerous situation and has been reunited with his or her grateful owner. Members of your community, including those who slither, walk, or fly, are lucky to have such kind first responders who don't hesitate to help humans or other animals in need. So that was a very nice letter from PETA that we received. Deputies Calvin Zirkle and Deputies Doug Hayden are the officers who went in the house, and I'm sure that the boa constrictor is probably lucky it was them and not me. And a number of our other deputies who probably wouldn't have gone in either to get a snake, but they did, and everything turned out good. So just another example of the amazing people that we have. Touching on 2 other things and one of the things that Judge Cunnington said, You know, these fees are ridiculous. The fee changes. You know, it's just another way to stick it to the taxpayers, because the taxpayers are going to ultimately be the one that are paying the bills for these people. And these are the people who are burdened on our system. They are the ones causing this, not the law-abiding citizens out there who, you know, follow the law, don't get in trouble. These people are burdening our system, and now our state legislature, in their infinite wisdom, wants them to stop paying for the things that they do, the things that they create. It is the absolute most ridiculous thing I've ever seen in my life. And you know, they typically the legislators make laws without knowing the effects of how it affects everybody. All they're worried about is just making sure that poor Johnny, who just robbed a bank, doesn't have to pay $500 in fines. And it's absolutely repulsive. Very frustrating. It gives new meaning to the term crime doesn't pay. But and then lastly, the community service. I think you know, the one thing that didn't get mentioned about community service is a lot of times that takes people. There are a lot of churches, there are a lot of nonprofits out there that would really like to get their hands on some community service people. You get into that whole thing of monitoring and making sure they do the work, and you know, it is, again, it's burdensome on whether it's probation, whether it's the sheriff's office, it doesn't matter. It is still a burden on our system. I think there's some advantages to having it, and I think it's something that we need to explore, but I think it's got to be done right, and it's got to be worth the investment in getting these people. You run into some other problems with if you go to park districts, or if you go to other government agencies, you get into some union issues that are out there as well. So, you know, I think there's some good to be had by it, and it's something that we are looking into to see if we can do it in some way, shape, or form. But, you know, unfortunately, it's coming, and we really don't get a say. That's all I got.
Mr. Snipes.
I remember they used to say used to be back in the day that they said crime doesn't pay, but now we have to say crime costs, because it's costing us at this particular point. The community service, I think, is a good it's a good opportunity for an individual to recompense their whatever their action is, the fees is concerned. They used to take it like $8 divided into, I remember, or whatever the minimum wage was, divided into the number of the fine to come up with. But now I saw where it worked, and then I saw one time where it didn't work as well. I think there was a certain pastor that was just writing them off or whatever, and that wasn't the case, and he got arrested, and it sent the news all the way through. I don't know if you recall that back in the day. One thing I do know is when my pastor get them, they got a whole line list of things, so they really don't come back to him, because you got to work, and he's going to make sure you work. So for those individuals that it do work for, we always want you to be part of the process and not let them be a scapegoat, because basically when you allow them to escape, it in essence gives them a free pass to, and then also allows you to now go from clergy to criminal. So you don't want that to happen either. So it's just a word of caution that if you do get these individuals from the courts or whatever to do community service, please let them do what they have to do.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Mr. Gessner, in your package you have a copy of the monthly report and a copy of the monthly receipts. So take a motion to combine and approve. Mr. Smith, second by Mr. Lear. Good morning.
Top of the morning to you. I'll be brief. I got an autopsy in 15 minutes on a motorcycle accident. As you can see, our statistics for the month from December to March we're still holding pretty good on autopsies. We've rised a little bit from average around 4.5 to we had a 7 in March, which is way under what 2018 was, or 17. So we're moving right along. trying to hold everything back the way, however we can. I'll take any questions on any of that.
Mr. Altoff.
Sorry for all the questions, but I haven't been here for a while. The differences in the cremation permits. Why, you know, 1,500, 153, or what?
Those are funeral homes that pay in advance. As far as money wise,
Yeah. I mean, why is $153 and 1,500?
They bought 10.
Oh,
They buy 10 permits.
gotcha. Thank you.
these are all on permits, yeah.
Yeah, all right.
In other words, we don't allow any cremations out because they come from up, you know where, up north, and you never see them again. So you lose money on the deal. That way we make them pay hard.
Thank you.
The other thing is, Bill, is like for 53, if it's with a credit card, there's a charge on the credit card, or if it's paid by a check, it's correct.
Correct. You're right on the button.
I'm looking for a part-time. No, just kidding.
You sure?
Yeah, no, I am not.
Other than any other questions on that? Our overdoses are still down. Knock, knock. Right here, wood, whatever. I'm listening to all of your House bills there, and we were able to knock our House bill out, House Bill 0106. Thank you for those that sent in witness slips on that. It helped quite considerably. They got bombarded on that. That would have cost us a large amount of money out of our area. So thank you. We're continuing doing work on, we'll be in Herscher High School coming up here for a prom program, and we'll be in Mantino. That's in your district. I'd like to see you come to it there and learn exactly what we're doing out there for the kids and talk a little bit. The state's attorney will be out at both of ours to be able to talk about the laws and also about what happens if you're caught with drugs. Also, I'm going to send these off to your email out of here. It's a very important point about marijuana. We have one more forum coming to Kankakee Community College, sponsored by the Pledge of Life, also the NAACP Youth Council, Hispanic Partnership, and along with the Kankakee State's Attorney in my office, is sponsoring this marijuana youth for our community. We have a Robert Moore, chairman of the Criminal Justice for the NAACP branches of Illinois, will be there. Sheriff Justin Smith from Laramie County Sheriff's Office out of Colorado. And when you hear what's happening in Colorado and California and Washington State, you scratch your head and say, why do we want this in Illinois? It's going to be a lot of different problems, not only for the state's attorney's office, the sheriff's office. This is a law you really don't want. And I hope you pay attention to it, because if you see, especially this Dr. Karen Randall talk, I know Mr. Lear was there. It's always happy to see the people from the county board there to see that what's going on in your community and in our county. We bring this to try to stop this because it's going to be unbelievable and what it's going to cost us. And you don't think there's going to be panhandles, a black market out there? They're all over Colorado. And then putting the different things into the marijuana. Do you want it to be right now it's 18 to 25% pure THC, and they make it up to, if you do a little waxing, which is out there in these dispositioned area, you can get up to 90% of THC. These are people who are going to mix that with alcohol. I've already seen an upward shot in our alcohol and THCs in our fatalities already here in Kankakee County. So I'm just warning you, like I did in 2012. Pay attention to this bill when it comes up. Talk to your representative, because we got one representative right now that's don't know which way she's going to go, and they got one that's co-sponsoring the bill. I've talked to both of them to the best of my ability, but I don't understand why. My opinion on that, I don't care where it goes. It's about revenue, not about saving lives.
When is the date on that?
April 16th, from just 1 to 3 p.m. At KCC's auditorium. And a big factor is Carolyn Frankie is basically putting a lot of this on. So.
Questions, comments? We have a motion and a second on the reports. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. Any old business to come before the committee? Any old business? Kevin, don't leave. Any new business to come before the committee? I have a question for you, Kevin. With all these changes, what's that going to do computerize for you for like Sandy's office and that?
I've discussed the matter a little bit with Andy, and he brought up one of the questions I had, and he had already had the same one. It could dramatically affect the renewals that they need to do, and when they need to go to do something else, could really potentially slow down what they need to do, because that's how 100% how they funded all the computers in the court system. So if that money's gonna go down or go away, that's a big deal, and I really don't know how you would fund it, but I've discussed it with the chairman, and he's thinking of options.
The problem's that we don't know until we know, because we don't have any data that shows. We can guess based on, like I said, the median income, but until we get 6 months through this, we won't see what the impact is. It's kind of frightening. How do you? And that's halfway through the budget year.
Yeah.
I mean, it could tank the budget for those departments substantially. As the sheriff said, we already have to dig court security out because that's always underwater, and that currently is now. It's almost going to be negligible. So, I mean, it's a lot. Specialty courts, teen court. I mean, wow.
Okay.
But they're getting more money at the state, so it's okay.
Your mic's off. Any other new business to come before the committee? Take a motion to adjourn. Mr. Olta. Mr. Snipes second. All in favor say aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you.